Hello and welcome to a new episode of In the District. Today we're sitting down with New York State Senator Luis Sepúlveda from the 32nd Senate District, including the neighborhoods of Parkchester, Soundview, West Farms, Hunts Point, Longwood, Concourse, Melrose, Morrisania, East Tremont, and Westchester Square. Join us to learn more about his background, life as a public servant, and much more. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and this program is brought to you from BronxNet's brand new Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx. Senator Sepúlveda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Now, as I mentioned, you're a leader in so many of these communities. What are your top priorities for improving the quality of life in the neighborhoods of District 32?
For me, everything begins and ends with education. Our district is still one of the poorest districts in the entire state of New York, probably in the country. Our graduation rates are significantly lower than the rest of the city. Our members, people that live in the community that have bachelor's degrees, is even a smaller number when you compare it to the rest of the state. We lag in health. A lot of the things that are problematic for our community, we are at the top. However, improvement is coming. When you say what's the most important thing, again, everything begins and ends with education. When you see the education gap that exists between the students in our community and more affluent neighborhoods, that is where the concern is at. Because a lot of our children are not getting the kind of education that they should get. They're not graduating at a level that they should graduate, whereas other kids in more affluent neighborhoods are. So you see the education gap continue, and with that comes the economic gap. The jobs that pay more money, usually there's a direct correlation between your level of education and the money that you make, your income. And so we're seeing that in the communities that we have because the education is not at the par with the rest of the communities. And again, we're working on it. I have some great colleagues with me in the Assembly and the City Council, and things have gotten better. In fact, I say in some cases significantly better. But we still have more work to do, and our top priority has to be education, also health, and housing. Those are the three big issues that we have in this community. But I really have a strong belief that education cures most of these issues.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I know for a lot of Bronx residents, unfortunately, this is the reality, crime is also a concern. I understand that in April you announced that there were landmark successes in crime prevention and housing within 2024-2025 state budget, which totals $237 billion. Can you just explain a little bit more about that effort and how, in addition to all of the things that you're doing to assist people in the Bronx, how this can also assist those living in the Bronx?
Well, housing is a major issue in this community. People are getting evicted at rates that still are on par with, although it's decreased, but it's still on par with when we had the crisis, COVID crisis. In my district, it's one of the biggest issues. Also crime. I want to point out that significant crime or major crimes like homicides have gone down about 20% in the entire city of New York, and crime is reaching the pre-pandemic levels throughout the district, but you still need more work because if one senior citizen, if one person feels like their life is not safe when they're in the community, then we have to do everything we can to improve that. So what we do is, through the budget primarily, we make sure that we provide funding so that the NYPD can perform effectively. We also try to do incentives for people to develop affordable housing, be it through tax breaks, be it through not-for-profit organizations that we get funding to. There are different ways to skin the cat, but me as representing a very poor district, I'm going to provide as much as I can in my budget for housing and for education. And so these are some of the ways that we do it, by making sure that we can fund some of these programs and get people housed and make us a safer neighborhood.
Now, I understand that you also made a huge effort, and it was a collaborative effort, to introduce a bill combating EBT fraud. Can you tell me a little bit more about the bill and its importance to members of our community?
Yeah, sure. So it was a bill promoted by or sponsored by my colleague Simca Felder from Brooklyn, and a couple of my other colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate. EBT fraud was a problem. People selling their EBT monies at a discount to individuals who would use it. And sometimes the store themselves engage in fraud. And so we put down a bill there to clamp down on some of this behavior to increase the penalty. And I was a sponsor of it because it's an issue also in our district, but most of the credit to that should go to Senator Simca Felder from Brooklyn.
And then can you just explain, I know that a lot of members of our community, as we mentioned before, we live, unfortunately, in one of the poorest districts in the city. You know, how could this also impact them positively?
How can the bill?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it'll significantly decrease fraud. I mean, the monies that are used to pay people through EBT or tax-paying funded programs, everything that we pay for, schools, education. And so if you're using the EBT card and you're committing fraud, you're stealing from the state. You're stealing from every individual taxpayer. And so the positive income is that the monies will go where they belong, and in fact they'll be used appropriately going to these families that need it, and not to some scammers or fraudsters that are stealing money from our state.
Thank you. And I appreciate you clarifying that, because I know that unfortunately sometimes people have ideas about people who use EBT and who actually need it. And it is very important to make the difference that, you know, there are people who are just scammers, and the people that genuinely need it are using it for food. So thank you so much for clarifying that.
Listen, there's obviously fraud in every system.
Right.
But the fraud that EBT brings, while impacts a neighborhood, it's not as significant as other frauds, for example, corporate fraud or corporate greed, which create a bigger problem, I believe, in this country. But certainly we have to cut down on every level of fraud, especially when it comes to fundings that are supposed to be used to feed families.
Now, as someone with a legal background, how do you use your expertise in law to craft and advocate for legislation that affects urban communities?
Interesting. If you look at criminal justice reform, especially those bills that pass, bail reform, and regardless of what you feel, bail reform has worked. You've decreased the number of people that are arrested. People have kept their jobs. You know, we focus more now on more significant crime. And other aspects of criminal justice reform that we were able to form to make the system fairer, to make the system less dependent on the color of your skin or the bank accounts that you or your parents may have. We have done some of these reforms. So my legal background as an attorney gives me a wider perspective on that. When you talk about housing laws, I spent 33 years practicing in housing court. So when it comes to issues like evictions and rent stabilization, it's an area that I very knowledgeable about because of my practice as an attorney. So when it comes to housing issues, I think I can essentially work with my colleagues and give them my expertise as to how to handle issues that impact our community's housing. When you talk about, you know, a lot of other issues that are law related. For example, one area where I've worked on almost my entire career as a legislator is to diversify the courts in New York State. You know, outside of New York, you have very few judges of color that are on the bench. And that's a topic that's very important to me as a practicing attorney. And I remember the first time I stepped foot in a courthouse in 1992, where if you look at the makeup of the courthouse in the Bronx, it certainly didn't reflect the population of the people that lived in it. You know, I can count the number of Latino, African-American judges with one hand. And that has significantly changed, especially here in the Bronx, where I think we've done the greatest effort to diversify our court system. But, you know, these are some of the areas that my expertise as a lawyer helps me provide information to my colleagues and to help me provide legislation.
Now, what are the most pressing post-incarceration challenges facing individuals in your district, and how can the state better support their reintegration into society?
It's a very complicated issue. Again, we have to prepare these individuals with job training or education. You know, there are some programs within the incarceration facilities that educate individuals that are incarcerated, and you can see that their level of success is greater, their recidivism levels are much lower, because they're able to educate themselves and acquire a trade. You know, there are other things that we can do to better prepare them for the outside world. You can give them training in jobs. You can help maybe integrate them into unions. The point is that we have to provide a way for these individuals that are released to be able to work, to sustain themselves and their family, so they don't feel like a life of crime is the only other option. So job creation and education is one, and the other one is to provide housing. Unfortunately, many of them do not have housing. Many of them do not have family, or many have family who don't want them living with them. So we provide some level of housing for them, and there are some programs, not-for-profit organizations that are doing great work with that. But we have to provide them somewhere to live so they don't wind up in the streets. And so preparing them to work, to make a living, and then allowing them to have housing when they come out.
Now, as a Bronx resident, I often think about a lot of the things that we need here in our borough just to make it better. But at times it can be overwhelming because there's just so many areas that need improvement. How do you balance the needs of diverse neighborhoods within your district, especially when crafting policy or allocating resources?
That's a really, really good question. It's such a diverse community. I have a large, for example, immigrant population. There's some language needs, language services needs, job training needs. There are all sorts of issues that impact the immigration community, like citizenship or getting their green cards or being defended and treated respectfully. So when I'm legislating, I have to look at their interests. A few years ago, I passed something called the Green Light Bill, which allows undocumented immigrants to be able to obtain a driver's license. And what that has done is has made the community safer because people are now with a driver's license. They obtain auto insurance in case of an accident. And it also helps with law enforcement because they aren't as afraid of being reported to an immigration agency and being deported from the country. That is one of the needs that I had in my community. I've mentioned it time and again, education. I visit all of my schools as much as possible. I try to visit every single one of my schools to see where they're performing at the statewide and citywide level. So I have to go into my schools to see where we have to put more funding in, where we have to press a principal or a superintendent. That is part of some of the needs that we have there. When I go, for example, when I see the healthcare system, our healthcare indicators are the worst in the state, again. So as a result of the diversity of my community, I have to go there. I have to visit the health centers. I have to visit places where health is provided and places where you need the health services, quality healthcare services. And so, it's such a diverse need. But you have to be able to do as much as possible so that you can defend and help these individuals that need it. And my community, because of the poverty, is a very high needs community. And so we have our hands full, but we enjoy doing what we do.
Well, Senator, I want to thank you so much. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city, and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak, and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
Welcome back. Hope you're enjoying today's In the District discussion with Senator Luis Sepúlveda. Luis, once again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Now, before we left, we were talking about diversity and the importance of that in this borough. But I'd love to take a moment to talk about your background and how it kind of contributes to the diversity of the Bronx, and how you use your cultural heritage and your background to kind of influence how you interact with the people of the Bronx.
Well, I was born in the country of Brooklyn to Puerto Rican parents. I am also a Dominican citizen. About 2.5 years ago, the President of the Dominican Republic granted me citizenship by decree, something I'm very proud of. In Brooklyn, I live amongst the Hispanic population and the African American population. I lived in neighborhoods like the ones I represent. I come from poverty. My father came here from Puerto Rico as a factory worker. My mother was a very young mother at 16 years old. Some of the very same issues that exist in our communities are some of the issues that I grew up facing. But I also was blessed that I lived in a very diverse community. At some point in my family, we moved to a place called Woodside, Queens. In that area, I met more people from South America, more people from the Dominican Republic, more people from Africa. In my district right now, I have a very diverse African population. I have people from Bangladesh. I have people from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. I believe that my experiences as a child, living amongst such a diverse culture, really helped me prepare for my job as an assemblyman and a state senator. And I'm very comfortable in all my communities. I visit all the houses of worship. I visit the churches, the mosques, the temples, any place. And I think my experience makes me feel a certain level of comfort because that's what I saw and I grew up with as a child and kept on as an adult and as a legislator. So my diverse background, I believe, helps me be a better legislator, better understand that diversity actually makes a community much better. That diversity is something that we should all be proud of. I know this political climate right now is sometimes dictating opposite, but the reality is that diversity is something that makes this country even that much better.
And I know earlier you talked about the Green Light Bill, which I think is a great example of kind of being part of a diverse community. With that being said, what are some of the challenges, although it's very beautiful, what are some of the challenges that people in diverse communities have to face that, maybe people who don't come from these communities may not understand or know about?
Well, I mean, one of the obvious things is racism. Some of these individuals, I've even here in the Bronx, I've been in restaurants where I've heard somebody yell, "Go back to your own country," which infuriates me. That's a major issue. Language barriers are also a major issue for the immigrant community. Getting jobs, making sure that they have the correct documentation so they're able to work legally and pay Social Security and whatever else they're supposed to pay. That's something that sometimes you have to provide the assistance. Housing is another major issue for the community, for the immigrant population. So it's a wide range of issues, but again, we love taking care of the community and doing as much as we can to help them.
Now, I also understand that like a major theme for today was education, and we got the sense that it was very something important to you in the work that you do. Can you talk about some ways that within our communities, although we struggle with education, maybe what are some successes that you've seen in regard to education, especially when we talk about high school or even higher education?
Well, there is a direct correlation between parental involvement in a child's education and how well the child does. What you see is that in some schools, parents are involved on a daily basis. They're meeting with the PTA. They're meeting with their teachers. That is one thing that I implore the parents in my district to get involved in. Go to your child's school and see how they're doing. That's a critical component of a better education. The other thing is funding. It is my job to highlight the issues that we have in my district. It is my job to highlight the fact that our kids are not graduating at the same rate as more affluent neighborhoods. And with that, I use the information that I have in terms of graduation rates, to pound on the governor's door and the legislators, my colleagues, when during budget season and say, we need more money for this school. We need more money for this district. I also get discretionary monies. And I can tell you that about 90% of my discretionary monies I dole out to my schools because I'm very passionate about it. You know, if you look at every empirical data that indicates to you that the higher your education, the better you will do financially in your life and in your health. And so, you know, these are the things that have to take place.
And I think it's really important that you kind of highlighted that correlation because, as many of us know, unfortunately, a lot of areas of the Bronx, you know, we're rated number 62, like the lowest.
62 out of 62.
Yeah, out of 62 out of 62. Can you talk a little bit more about that, you know, revelation, and just, you know, what are some things that are being done to kind of help mitigate that issue?
Well, you know, for the record, I really hate that 62 out of 62. You know, I hope we never have to use that in the future. You know, there are a lot of things that we have to do to get out of that 62. You know, the interesting thing is one area is health. The largest non-governmental employer in the Bronx is the health industry. Like Montefiore is like a major provider and creator of jobs here and other hospitals. Yet, we're 62 out of 62 in health metrics. I just don't understand that. You know, we have some great organizations that are providing quality health care in this community, like, you know, organizations like Urban Health Plan. I know they do a great job here in the Bronx, and we need more. Essence, another one. We need more of these to provide healthcare needs. But that's, you know, that's something that we have to really, really face. It's a major problem we have here.
And I definitely want to take things on a more positive note because there's a lot of amazing things happening here in the Bronx. But as you mentioned, you were actually born in Brooklyn. And as we all know, the boroughs, we are a family, but there is sometimes that separation. So I'm curious to know, like, what brought you to the Bronx and, you know, what are some things you genuinely love about this borough?
Well, one thing I love about this borough, that's the easier one, is the diversity and the warmth of people. I think people in this county are very accepting of other people. We have some great places to go to. We have my favorite zoo in the entire world, which is the Bronx Zoo, and it's in my district. A couple of steps from my district, we have a wonderful botanical gardens. We have Yankee Stadium here. We have wonderful restaurants, not just in Arthur Avenue, but throughout the county. And you're seeing a lot of diverse ethnic foods coming to the area. So, you know, you can do, one of the great things that you can do is you can step out and walk down Grand Concourse, and at some point you'll see different kinds of restaurants that you can buy food from. So, you know, we're seeing some of this happening now. In my district, we can see that a lot of people that come to the Bronx are coming to the Bronx Zoo. You know, our music, you know, we created hip hop. Regardless of what Queens wants to take credit for. So, you know, there's so many different things in this county that we can do, that people can come here and do. That's such a great positive for this community. So I want to encourage people to come here and see what we have to offer, and they won't regret it.
And with that being said, like, you know, a lot of people, when they think New York, they just think Manhattan. Maybe Brooklyn sometimes, they'll think about Brooklyn because, you know, over time, Brooklyn has become a lot more cool and a lot more hip. But, you know, what can we do to kind of change people's outlook of the Bronx? And it's not just maybe tourists, but even people who live in the borough can sometimes have you know, a darker view of the borough that they live in. So what can we do to kind of change that?
I mean, part of the problem was the perception. When you had ridiculous movies like Fort Apache, The Bronx, and when people talk about the Bronx and crime, they almost do it as an afterthought, like, well, you know, it could be worse, it could be in the Bronx. And these are kind of things that you hear, I've heard over the years. I think one of the biggest jobs that we have to do, and to some degrees, you know, some of us are doing it, you know, our leaders are doing it, is to change the perception of what the Bronx is. You know, people think that if you step foot in the Bronx, that you're putting your life at risk, when in fact, you know, it's obviously it has one of the highest crime rates in the state, but it's still a lot safer than places in Louisiana, Mississippi, and, you know, other red states. So, you know, we have to really work hard at changing that perception, to see that people can come here, they can live here, they can raise their families here, they can invest here, and you're seeing that happening with some of the immigrant communities coming here. They see it, and I think if people don't see that sooner, they're going to miss out on great opportunities that this county has. Right,
and I think that as somebody who has was born and raised in the Bronx, just even in my time, I've seen it transform so
Yes.
much from things that I didn't have when I was younger that I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
And it's really showing that like we don't have to leave the borough
Right, right.
to like get good food or to see a really great, concert. And I think those are all some really amazing things that's going to help the borough grow.
Yeah.
With that, I want to know like what do you hope to see for the future of the Bronx?
I hope to see a very healthy, economically developed county. I hope to see a county where our kids are graduating at 95% every year. I hope to see a county where families can feel secure and safe when they walk in the street and where they're home. I hope to see a county where I'm visiting my schools on graduation day and seeing that time after time all these children are going to colleges and getting Bachelor of Arts degree. And I hope to see a county where our kids, and it's another very important topic that I've been pushing, is financial literacy for our children. There are many ways where you can accumulate wealth, generational wealth, without having a business that gives you $1 million a year. There are many ways you can start now if you have young children to start creating wealth for them, so by the time they're older, that they're more comfortable. And you can do that by having knowledge of some of the financial tools that are, like for example, a Roth IRA. It's a great tool for the middle class. These are things that we have to teach our kids, we have to teach our communities so that we can create more wealth within our communities. And you can see that with that, you resolve a lot of the problems that we have here.
And before I let you go, could you just, kind of leave us with, maybe one issue or topic that you are most likely going to, I guess, focus on, like let's say when you leave here today?
Well, it's a topic we've been working on for a couple of years, and that's to reform the property tax system for the city of New York. I have a committee that I am the chair of in the Senate called the City Committee, the Cities Once Committee. And a lot of the legislation that happens for the city of New York has to go through my committee. I've been pushing it started with Mayor de Blasio and now continue with Eric Adams, a system to modify how we charge property taxes here, because you have some very affluent neighborhoods, homes there, that are paying either equal or less property taxes than neighborhoods that are a little poorer. And so that shouldn't be. So we want to make it so the system is fair, and it's based on the valuation of homes. And I think that can spur some more housing and affordable housing in the community.
Well, Senator, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Can you quickly just let everybody know where they can go to stay up to date with you?
Sure. You can go on social media to just put in my name, Senator Sepúlveda, or you can call my office at 718-991-3161. We're available all the time. You can leave a message if it's late, but I can guarantee you that you will get a call, and we will service you as best as we can.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank everyone for watching. And remember, you can always watch this program anytime, anywhere on BronxNet.org and YouTube. While you're there, be sure to follow BronxNet on social media to find out who will be the next community leader we will sit down with on In the District. From BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx, I'm Kibin Alleyne. Talk soon.